Hi, Bobcats. In this section, we're going to take a look at the symbols that are used for the elements. You commonly find these on the periodic table, and I just want to take a look at the patterns and how we're going to write the symbols for those elements. Our objective is to deduce or figure out for ourselves the rules that are followed when we write the symbol for an element. The periodic table is an iconic symbol of the discipline of chemistry. It shows all of the known elements in one spot. This particular version of the periodic table shows the element's name, the element's symbol, and also some other data. There's something called the atomic number, which is the way that we order the elements in the periodic table, starting with 1 in the upper left-hand corner and then counting up. And then also something known as the average atomic mass for each element. Over the next few slides, we're going to step through trying to figure out the rules for writing the symbols for each element. The symbol is the short version of the element that's typically 1 or 2 letters as opposed to the name. We're going to start by taking a look at the names and symbols for a carefully selected group of elements. Hydrogen is H, carbon is C, fluorine is F, oxygen is O, and yttrium is Y. What I want you to focus on are all of the things about the symbols themselves. What's the formatting? What letters were chosen? Where did those letters come from? And if you need to pause the video for a moment to think about that, go ahead and pause it. Some of the things you may have noticed is that every last one of these symbols is a capital letter. Something else you might have noticed is that the symbols like H for hydrogen, are pulling the first letter of each element name. So C is carbon, F is fluorine. So it's looking like at this point that the symbols consist of one capital letter, and that capital letter is the first letter of the element's name. Now let's look at a different set of elements. Helium has a symbol He. Calcium is Ca, francium is Fr, osmium is Os, and ytterbium is Yb. Well, some of the pattern that we found in the last group of elements will still hold. We're using capital letters at the beginning of the element symbol, but now we have 2 letters instead of just 1. And notice that in the case that we use two letters, the second letter is lowercase. It is not an uppercase. So we've got uppercase followed by lowercase. Also, the first letter of the element name is still the first letter of the symbol. The second letter, though, has some variation. For the first 4 of these symbols, it's the second letter of the element's name, but not so for the last one. Ytterbium pulls a B from later on in the symbol name. So it looks like for these elements, the symbol is the first letter as a capital letter, and then the second letter as a small letter is pulled from somewhere in this element's name. Okay, so let's take a look at one last set. Potassium is K, silver is Ag, gold is Au, and sodium Na, tungsten W. I don't know about you, but I'm having a hard time finding a W anywhere in the word tungsten. These symbols don't seem to have a connection to the letters that are used in the name of the element. Aha! That is because the symbols are being pulled from the names of the elements in a different language, such as Latin, Greek, or even Swedish. In Latin, potassium is kalium, In Greek, silver is argentum. And so that is where these symbols are coming from. They are following our same convention that if it's a single letter, it's a capital. If it's two letters, the first is capital, the second is lowercase. But the letters are being pulled from the name of the element in a different language. Now that we've looked at a bunch of different elements, let's write out the rules that we came up with. So the first rule is that the first letter is capital. The second letter, if there is one, so second letter, if needed, is lowercase. And sometimes these symbols come from a foreign language, something like Latin, Greek, Swedish. When I go to test this on a test or a quiz, be real clear about this. You are always going to have a periodic table handy. So it's not likely that I'm going to say, what is the symbol for sodium? Because then you just find sodium on the periodic table and you say, oh yeah, that's Na. I usually go for hypothetical cases, like if a chemist at Texas State were to develop a new element, create a new element, and decided to name it bobcadium. Let's see, I can't spell this morning. Bobcadium. What kind of a symbol would you propose for this? Well, how about B? Because that's the first letter of the element name. Well, there's a problem. We can't use B because it's already used for boron. So we can't propose just capital B. So that's not going to work. But we may be able to propose something like BC. And if we use BC, we've got to be careful that the first letter is capital and the second letter is lowercase. We may be able to use something like, BT is, some other combination as well, if you would prefer. But you've got to be really sure that that first letter is capital and the second letter is lowercase. Also, I would strongly recommend that you memorize those first 36 elements, their names and their symbols, plus a couple other ones that we commonly use, like silver, gold, mercury, and lead, just because you're going to see these all the time, and having that fluency with the element names and symbols makes your life a whole lot easier. I always feel bad for students who get to the end of the semester and they're looking up iron in the periodic table and they find I and they get all excited. Okay, I found the symbol. And then they read more closely and they realize, nope, I is iodine. Then they find IR and they're all excited till they read IR is iridium. And then at last they settle on Fe for iron. So it's just that fluency makes life in chemistry a little bit easier. Circling back around to our objectives, our objective for this section was to deduce the rules for writing an element symbol.